a racial slur spray painted
on high school are calling for hate crime charges against the people who spray painted racist images on a football field.
Words and symbols have a history and a power of their own. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't know the history behind these words and symbols and thus the power they hold. So my question is, what should people know about the history of the N-word that was spray painted on the football field?
The history of the N-word goes back to when African slaves were brought across the Atlantic Ocean to North America, with the first landing on the shores of Jamestown in 1620. It was simply a matter of describing Africans as Negroes. Negro was just a descriptor. In Spanish, it's negra, Negra, and so that descriptor was applied to the African slaves, but that's in the 1600s. Within that same century, in the 1600s, you're going to have a derogatory version of that. So with the N-word being used in the colonial times, it was used to apply to those who had no power. It's about power and control to be established over the slaves within the colonies and then within the United States. So
the initial word was a mispronunciation by whites, that southern drawl that came from what was supposed to be Negro and then Negra and then degenerated down to this. The slaves, because that's the only thing they ever heard themselves being called, referred to themselves as that, using the N-word during slavery and after slavery. Okay, so it wasn't hate then when they were talking to each other. That's just the only word they ever heard that was used to describe them.
The Library of Congress has slave narratives, and so the oral histories are written exactly as they were being spoken. And the N-word was used among slaves because, as Mr. Kent said, they were hearing it themselves from the slave owners. But it was also used pejoratively among themselves, even as it was used pejoratively by the white slave owners.
Now it's been given a different meaning and power, the use of that word to hurt people, okay? When before it was a matter of communication, now it's being used to hurt, but it's because you're allowing it to hurt them, hurt yourself.
That currency of hate is being trafficked with the N-word. So when the N-word is used, especially as it was used on the Calvert football field, is to establish power and control, to reestablish control.
Slave owners use that word to establish power and dominance and white supremacy. And when you are captive and told over and over again that you're one thing, you will believe that. So what we face today in our black culture is 400 years of brainwashing to believe that that word is okay. But it's not. It's not okay with me. It's not okay within my culture. I don't allow it to be used around me or near me, and I don't definitely endorse that.
I personally take blame for this generation, these young kids not understanding the meaning of that word. We've tried to make it a word of endearment in my culture, in my culture, but it doesn't work. So this generation grew up, and I'll say it again, myself, I used it a lot when I was growing up, and once I got to a certain age, I realized I didn't want to use it anymore. I stopped. And I would probably say once I had my little boy and I realized that I needed to be a better example for him, I stopped using it. But because for so many years we tried to make that word a word of endearment, I don't think they understood the evil that came with the word. So they lost what that word meant. I think we minimized that word. We made a word that was evil, attempt to make it nice, and then I don't think they understood how evil that word is, and it just really doesn't need to be used at all.
So in response to you as a history teacher in middle school, has it ever been in the curriculum to teach the history of the N-word to your students?
So that's a great question. It is not explicitly written in our curriculum to teach the N-word to our students, but the history of the N-word is an objective fact. It's not up for debate. Its use and its history throughout the United States. The power of teaching it in our curriculum would be that kids would understand the power of the word, the damage the word does, because the word isn't just a word. Like I said, it's a currency that is used to gain power, to reestablish power, and to gain control. There are and can be ways that we embed teaching of the history behind the word in Calvert County Public Schools when students reach of age, to be able to have those difficult conversations and to understand the objective fact about how the word has been used and changed throughout American history.
As a school system, if we are going to continue to use, for example, the book Huckleberry Finn in our curriculum, the N-word is used well over 200 times. So if that's the case, then we need to teach the students what the history of that word is. We need to not allow it to embarrass and alienate students that are in the class, and it's not dealt with properly.
If kids were to understand that in middle school and high school, maybe the application of the word in whatever way, whether it's social media, whether it's on the football field, whether it's vandalism, could perhaps be avoided, because kids would understand as they become young adults the damage and the violence and the impact of the word. If the intent can be disputed, the impact cannot.